Unfortunately, that horrific attack inside of that rabbi's home was not an isolated event. Over the 8 days of Hanukkah, there have been at least 9 violent anti-Jewish crimes in New York. This comes weeks after the shooting in Jersey City, where 2 shooters killed a police officer and 3 other people. And it all points to a disturbing trend nationwide. According to the FBI, hate crimes in houses of worship increased nearly 35% from 2014 to 2018. The Bureau finding the motivations for hate crimes include race and ethnicity, as well as religion and sexual orientation. Frederick Lawrence is an expert on hate crimes and distinguished lecturer at Georgetown Law School. He's also the author of the book, Punishing Hate, Bias Crimes Under American Law. Sir, thanks for coming on today. What is happening with this big jump in just 4 years, that 35% jump?
It is very disturbing. If you look back just those 4 years, you see a trend back to levels that we have not seen since really we started keeping track of these things in the late 1970s, early 1980s. So there are a number of factors that may be contributing, but I think one of the most important things right now is that we have a heightened recognition of the problem. Your piece just talked about the state charges against Thomas, but he's also been subject now to federal hate crime laws charges, which I think is very important because we label this not as a local trend, but as a national trend and something that requires attention at the highest level of the federal government.
Do you think there's anything else going on? Any reason why people are just maybe more elevated right now? People are a little bit angrier?
You know, these things are always overdetermined, but I will say one of the ironies is that there's a strong correlation that we've seen over time that hate crimes tend to go up when the economy is bad. Higher unemployment means higher disaffection and levels of hate crimes. That's not the situation now, quite the contrary. But there do seem to be high levels of anger, of divisiveness in society, and that does express itself sometimes in these kinds of bias-motivated crimes. I think on top of that, there's the problem of copycat crimes. People see the attention that these criminals get, and that attracts them as well. It's almost a kind of epidemic once it starts.
You know, you talked about rhetoric in society. You know, the politicians on both sides blame each other for it. A lot of the left blames the president's rhetoric. A lot of people on the right, Republicans, blame what they call anti-Semitic leftist politicians in this country for some of the things they say. How big of a part do you think that plays?
Well, I think it's really important that people stop pointing fingers and start looking in the mirror, thinking about what can all of us do to play a role. Look, except for people like Thomas himself, none of us is individually guilty, but we're all responsible. Every member of society has got a role to play here, and it starts at the very top, people in public life, that we need a language of inclusiveness and of welcome and of diversity, not a language of anger and division and hatred.
Your book's called Punishing Hate. What do you think of the punishments for hate crimes? Are they stiff enough?
I think they are stiff enough. I think the most important thing is that these crimes you recognize as hate crimes. You know, for a long time, Rob, that element of the crime wasn't even looked at. And then you look at a community like that community in Muncie and you tell them, well, this is just a case of assault. It's not just assault. It's religiously motivated assault. The people in the church in Texas, same thing. They know they weren't attacked just because they happened to be walking down the street. They're attacked while they're at prayer, while they're in a church service. So I think it's very important that we label these things for what they are, we prosecute them for what they are. So I think the laws are there. The important thing is that we raise visibility and we enforce them.
Let's talk about one more disturbing trend in our society right now, and that is mass killings. That's the killing of 4 more people. In 2019, we've got some numbers here we can pull up that are going to show we had 41 in 2019, 33 in shootings and 210 deaths. It's a scary number. It seems like we're reporting on this a lot. What is happening with all of these mass killings?
It is a scary number. It's the highest it's been since 2006. Now, keep in mind, 41 incidents in a big country like ours. We don't want to blow it out of proportion, but we also don't want to miss something that's very significant that's going on. And I think, again, you have copycat crimes where people see this and they play out that way. I do think we have to pay attention to the availability of firearms in the hands not just of a criminal element, but of people who are not trained to use firearms. About 3/4 of those instances that were up on your graphic, those were cases that involved firearms. So that's going to continue to be an issue that we have to face as a country.
Interesting what you said about copycat as well. It does seem like it becomes somewhat of a fad over time. They consistently happen in the same kinds of places.
Look, we do know that different kinds of crimes become more in fad, and the hope has to be that we can staunch the social bleeding on this. And part of that is exactly the kind of conversation we're having, that it's very necessary to come together as a society and say, this cannot stand. We cannot allow this.
Sir, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it.
Pleasure being with you. Happy New Year.